Sports Radio on FS1. It's Joy Taylor's birthday today. Look at those beautiful flowers. Greg COSELL in a couple of minutes. The beautiful flowers.
I do feel like we need to explain why there's a bouquet of flowers next to my head. But thank you, Colin.
It's my wife's birthday today and Joy Taylor's birthday today.
Yes, happy birthday.
And that actually makes it way easier for me.
Yes.
It does.
We're all Capricorns.
I'm a Capricorn. You're a Capricorn. Capricorns are very difficult.
I mean, I disagree, but that seems to be the word on the street.
The word on the street is we're very difficult. That's what the street...
We're just determined and focused.
That's
all
how I
you look
see
at
it.
Things, you know?
That's how I see it.
It's all about perspective.
I am determined and you are determined.
Yeah, you may think I'm difficult, but I really just have stuff to do today.
Yeah, my stuff.
Yeah.
Good to have you in. Greg COSELL, a couple of minutes. Actually, this weekend's pretty interesting because Rams at Saints, Patriots at Chiefs is the same matchup. A hotshot quarterback everybody's in love with, right? Patrick Mahomes got the youth, he's got the mobility, he's got the arm, he's got the playmakers. And Jared Goff has got the arm, he's a number one pick, he's got the great play designer, he's got Robert Woods, he got Todd Gurley, got the offensive line, and both are facing old guys. And Tom Brady can't make all the throws, but he kind of knows what he's doing before the snap. And Drew Brees can't make all the throws, doesn't throw the ball deep much anymore, but he knows where he's going before the snap. And so what's more valuable? Having the young make all the throws in his youth, a little better mobility at the line of scrimmage, not making a ton now, so you get a bunch of weapons and a head coach, Sean McVay, in his ear until the ball is snapped. Or the two guys, Brees and Brady, the veterans, who are making way more, but they don't have to turn to the coach. They know what they're doing before the ball is snapped. Here's one thing to remember. The last four Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, the average age was 36. And the last two young whippersnappers to win a Super Bowl were Big Ben and Russell Wilson. Those were the last two kid quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl. Both had historically good defenses, and neither was asked to do a ton. Nick Foles is almost 30. Brady's almost 40. Peyton was almost 40. Brady's 37. We're watching the same matchup this week. Old veteran quarterback who's essentially a coach on the field. He has seen everything before, and there are some athletic mobility arm limitations. Or the young, not as highly compensated quarterback with a bunch of weapons who is still a kid quarterback. Just don't forget, kid quarterbacks with the weapons, turning and looking to the coach, relying on the coach on the sidelines more, don't win a lot of Super Bowls in this league. Nick Foles, multiple teams, very coachable, 6-7 years, not nearly the talent of Carson Wentz. But even when you watch the Eagles, there is something about Foles in that lineup that kind of seems to click. Talent alone does not win Super Bowls. These old guys who don't rely on the coaching as much are winning them. A lot. With that, over 30 years at NFL Films, one of my favorite segments of the week. We have 3 football games left until, next year, and we bring in Greg COSELL. I want to start on the Rams and the Saints. That will be the first game. It'll be on Fox. So I want to start with this, Greg. The Saints offense, September, October, November, was one offense, pretty high-flying. Then they faced the Cowboys, and since then, yards per play has gone down, haven't been quite as dynamic. What is the film saying happened to the Saints?
Well, I think if you're being honest, Colin, in studying the tape, you will say that Drew Brees has not played particularly well over the last, I don't know when that started, but it was certainly the last 4 or 5 weeks of the regular season. I would say that he was uncharacteristically inaccurate, and by that I mean his ball placement wasn't quite as precise. I thought there were times, based on the route concepts and where I know that he should be going with the ball, that he didn't turn it loose a number of times. He did that. So I would say overall, if you're being honest in your evaluation, you would say that Drew Brees did not play at the same level.
Which I would argue is there's a number on Tom Brady that he's not quite been as good in December as he has been in October and early. That would point to fatigue and age. Is that unrealistic?
That's hard to know for sure because now we're trying to just sort of speculate as to why that may be the case. In the case of Breeze, I don't know the answer to that. Breeze has always been a quarterback that I think his lower body has been really important to his game. Not in terms of running around like, let's say, a Russell Wilson, but just how strong he is in his lower body to move within the pocket and then to be able to drive the ball. Not necessarily with a power arm. He's not a power thrower, but just the ability to move, reset, stay on balance with a very firm base. Some might even look at the first play of the game against the Eagles last week when he had to stay in the pocket and sort of reset and try to drive a deep ball to Ted Ginn, and it came up short.
Yeah. The Rams are interesting. They kind of had to reboot. They were very dynamic early, hit a rough stretch, and then they kind of rebooted against the Niners in Arizona, got a bye, and continued that sort of power running game they'd used against the Cardinals and Niners against the Cowboys. So they've kind of rebooted. I thought the bye week was kind of very important for this veteran offensive line to get rest, and they looked very sharp. But let's go to the Rams specifically. It does feel like they've gone back or perhaps created with C.J. Anderson and Gurley a little bit of a different offense than I saw early. It feels very run-centric.
Well, I think it's always been that way. It's just they've been more successful because that's the way they start their offense. During the regular season, keep in mind, they were the third best rushing team in the league, and they run the ball a lot. They were just very successful, and they're coming off the Cowboys game in which they did some really good things, some really nuanced things. They did a lot of tempo. They played against a Cowboys defense that's very quick, very fast, likes to move. So what they did is they went tempo, and they got Goff to the line of scrimmage. Now, he didn't always snap the ball right away. Sometimes he waited till there were 3-4 seconds on the clock. But when you do that, the defense can't move. The defense has to be static. And they got the front looks that they wanted. They got the defense static, and they were able to attack those front looks. Their run game is all about attacking the front, the defensive front that they're facing, because their run game is not overly diverse. It's different terms different coaches use, but it's essentially outside zone and inside zone. So it's not a really diverse run game.
It's interesting. Goff, I think we talked about this, had kind of a rough November. Teams have different personalities. Belichick's never been quite as, New England in September, New England in January. They're two different teams sometimes. What do you make of the matchup with Goff? What do you like that he does well? When is he at his best?
Well, I think Goff is very much and this is not a negative term because I think this is what coaches should do. I think Goff is very much a programmed player. I think that when their offense works functionally and effectively in all its dimensions, and he drops back and is relatively secure in the pocket, that he throws a beautiful ball. He's an easy thrower. He's a comfortable thrower. He has a good arm. For the most part, he's an accurate thrower. He lost some of his accuracy down the stretch. But when he's a comfortable player within the context of a multi-dimensional offense, he's very pretty to watch. The ball comes out really well.
And that offensive line is healthy. Is it as good as any offensive line left in the playoffs?
Well, the one thing that has been talked about all year, I remember it was talked about with the Eagles a year ago, is all 5 starters played all 16 games.
Yes.
And I think that when you get to this point in the season, that's really important. It's not likely you'll have errors in cohesion and those kinds of things where there's assignment mistakes based on a lack of understanding of what you're trying to get done. So I think that's really important going forward.
By the way, Sean McVay and Sean Payton are considered very smart play designers, very clever offensive coaches, so people can kind of lump them in together. Do you see similarities, or are they dissimilar sometimes?
Well, I think in their general approach, they're dissimilar because I think that Sean Payton is very much built on multiple personnel packages, multiple formation looks. Sean McVay doesn't do much of that at all. They line up in what we call 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on probably 95% of their snaps, and they're not that multiple with their formation looks. In fact, in the Week 9 game, they lined up in 11 personnel on every single snap, and the Saints defense lined up in nickel on every single snap. So now, here's a perfect example where teams have done things like this and it hasn't worked, and then people say, oh, you can't play like that. You're not creative. But for the Rams, it works.
Yeah. A player that played against Bill Walsh in the Niners 20 years ago told me, he said the Niners ran 12 plays. They had 30 different looks. He goes, they only ran 12 plays. And then I had a player that played with Sam Weiss and said we had 1,600 plays. We just didn't do any of them well. I've always thought the number of plays is overblown. You have to disguise looks, but do what you do well in life and in football. And,
And the Rams are what they're trying to do with all that jet motion and the things that they do, even just with your base outside zone run look, is they're just trying to cause misreads based on how people have to react to what they're doing. They're not fancy. They're not multiple in the way people think multiple, but they're just trying to cause defenders' eyes not to be in the right place, and then that causes them to be a beat late in their reactions.
Let's shift to the AFC. Good stuff. Greg COSELL joining us. So Patriots are 10-0 this year when they rush for 100 yards. They use their running backs as receivers very effectively. Sony Michel is now healthy. He's a very small but nimble, clever runner. He can go outside or inside the tackles. So when you look at their running game, where they're 10-0 when they get 100 yards, and you look at Kansas City's run defense, what does the film say?
Well, I think that the Patriots' run game is they run different concepts depending on the personnel that are on the field. They run certain concepts when they have 21 personnel, meaning the fullback Devlin is on the field, and they run other concepts when they're in 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers with Sony Michel. So, it depends what the look is, and the Chiefs, I think, will line up with their personnel accordingly. My guess is they'll play their base defense against 21 personnel, and they'll be in nickel versus the 11 personnel, and you'll see different formations. One of the things the Patriots have always done, Colin, almost better than anybody over these last 5, 6, 7 years, is when they have base personnel on the field, they are so diverse with their formation looks that they create a lot of problems for defenses.
I don't recall them playing any better than they did against the Chargers. I was shocked by their effectiveness. What blew you away on the film about New England's offense against what we consider to be excellent Charger personnel?
Well, I think that game was an odd game because of what the Chargers chose to do. The Chargers essentially chose to play with 6 defensive backs as their base defense. So when the Patriots lined up with a fullback on the field and big people, they had Devlin and Gronk on the field, the Chargers still had 6 defensive backs on the field, and they really got hurt with the run game through the first half. And again, that's what they chose to do. They spent all week taking that approach. They obviously thought it would be the best approach, but it hurt them.
Yeah. Let's go to Kansas City's offense. Tyreek Hill's the fastest player probably in football. He gave the Patriots fits, and I consider the Patriots secondary, Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore. Generally, it's very well coached. Belichick has a history with DBs. I think they have a pretty good secondary, in my opinion. Maybe not as gifted as like a Chargers, but I think Gilmore's a terrific player. I think Devin McCourty's, in his 30s, but he's a very good player. Tyreek Hill ate him alive. Plaxico Burress was on my show 40 minutes ago, and he said, nobody takes away the inside routes like Belichick. They use the sideline as a defender. The Patriots had no success against Tyreek Hill, and they generally take away your big receiving threat. Why is he such a nightmare for them?
Well, and keep this in mind. In the first game they played, and that was Week 6, Belichick made a decision. The decision he made in that game was that he was going to take away Kelsey and not Hill. Now, he may change that decision in this game. Because one thing about the Chiefs is besides being very well schemed, they have very good personnel. And Hill presents a different issue because of the pure speed. But there's certain defined tendencies that the Chiefs have in certain formations. And if I know that, Bill Belichick will know that. And I'll be very anxious to see what they do. One tendency in particular, when they go empty, and the Chiefs are very good out of empty, is they put Tyreek Hill in the inside slot to the trip side, what we call 3 strong. Yeah. And they tend to run him vertically from there. And you can't let him get over the top of you.
Yeah. So you're saying the Chiefs are a tad more predictable out of their sets?
Every team is. See, that's the thing. People think that these games are won and lost with cool stuff that no one's seen before. Everybody is predictable is probably not the right word. Everybody has tendencies, and teams know what the opponent's tendencies are. You don't win these games because you're tricking people and you're fooling people.
I'm going to throw a guy's name out. I don't even know if we have tape for him that I think is going to be big this weekend. Chris Jones, defensive lineman for the Chiefs. he has emerged, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but it seems in the last 2 months he has emerged as a real force, a really difficult guy to block. My takeaway on this game is if New England struggles with him and has to double him, it could affect the run game. Just talk a little about Kansas City's defensive front. I think I'm not saying Aaron Donald or Fletcher Cox, but boy, when I watch Kansas City play, Greg, he is hard to stay in front of.
Well, this will be purely a function, in my view, and this is not profound, Colin, but it speaks to what you're saying, of the Patriots being able to stay relatively on schedule. Because when they're playing well, and when you saw them last week, it seemed as if Brady got the ball out so quick.
Yes.
They were rarely in long yardage situations. There may be no more patient quarterback that I can remember than Tom Brady in willing to throw the ball 5 yards, and very often those 5-yard gains become 8-yard gains. And while that may not appear on a highlight, that's a big play, particularly if it's first down. Then it's 2nd and 2. So the key thing to limit not only Chris Jones working inside, but Justin Houston, who didn't play Week 6, and Dee Ford, is the ability to stay within the schedule of the offense, and then the ball comes out so quick. Yeah. And that's the key for the Patriots. When Brady's secure, and I thought this year one of the differences with Brady is he wasn't as good when there were people around him as he's been in years past. Yeah. So if you can keep him secure and get the ball out, it might negate that pass rush.
Well, Joey Bosa, I was watching film last night. Joey Bosa, they had him mic'd. He was just frustrated. He kept going to the sideline saying, he's getting rid of the ball.
He can't get there.
He can't get there. He's like, it doesn't matter how good our pass rush is.
Right.
And I look up and the ball's down the field. All right, your big play this week is Brady to Edelman against the Chiefs. Roll it.